Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In this video, I'm going to go through each and every 49ers free agent and let you know whether I would re-sign them or let them go and test free agency. There is a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in. Alrighty, so let's get into the list of players that I would either re-sign or let test free agency. We're just going to go through player by player on this list. This list is arranged by the players who made the most money last season to who made the least. So without further ado, let's get in, and we start off with Jimmy Ward. Now, Jimmy Ward is a player who I really like. I think he's been really solid for the 49ers, especially the last number of years. However, it seems like the relationship between himself and Shanahan is somewhat fractured. As you'll also see on screen, he's 32 years old, has missed some time, and I do think that he will be let go. I would like to bring him back at the right price. I just don't think that's what's going to happen, and I think that there are maybe other options out there who will come a lot cheaper that we could bring it at his position. Now, the next guy on the list here is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think that there's no question that Jimmy Garoppolo will not be on the team. Kyle Shanahan himself said so, and I just don't really see any scenario that Jimmy Garoppolo comes back. Although I said that same thing last year, I think that he will test free agency and ultimately sign probably with the Jets or the Texans or the Dolphins or someone like that. Now, the next one here is going to be pretty interesting. It's Samson Ebukam. Now, he's a player who I really did think was going to break out and have a big season for the 49ers. That didn't really happen. That's not to say that he was bad. I would consider bringing Ebukam back simply because he's still, only 28 years old, but definitely not at the price of what he made last season. Not nearly close towards $6 million a year, maybe $2 million. I would consider it, but ultimately I think he will probably get a deal somewhere else, maybe a team like Chicago that has a ton of cap space and looking for some depth on their defense. Now, the next guy, Emmanuel Mosley, this is a really tricky one because number one, I really like Emmanuel Mosley as a player. I think, we brought him in as an undrafted free agent, if I'm not mistaken, out of Tennessee, and I think he just almost from the get-go showed that he belonged in the league. Now, we know that week 5 against Carolina, he had the ACL tear, which was just really awful, really bad news for him. I personally, just because you look at his age, he's 27, I would bring him back on a 3-year deal. And the reason why is that when he was out there, he is just so good. We saw how good our defense was last year when he was out there. The first 4.5, almost 5 games when he was playing, you had him and Mooney Ward. They were locking it down on the outside, and then they played really well with Gibson and Hufanga at safety. So I would bring Mosley back probably on a 3-year deal. Now, the next guy on the list is going to be Mike McGlinchey. Now, with McGlinchey, he's kind of a little bit like Ebukam, where I think McGlinchey is a solid player. I do, however, think that he's going to be able to get much bigger money elsewhere. And another team, just like I'd mentioned with Ebukam, I think the Chicago Bears could be a pretty likely destination. They want to get some players who can protect Justin Fields. They have the most amount of cap space in the NFL. And while I think the Niners and Shanahan and Lynch would like to bring McGlinchey back, and it sounds like he would like to come back, I think at the end of the day, it's a business. And if he's going to be offered maybe $3, $4, $5 million a year more elsewhere, I think he would be wise to probably take that, although he would be going to a very much rebuilding team if he did go to the Chicago Bears. Now, the next guy, Azeez Shire. This is a guy that I really am a huge fan of. Azeez, again, similar to Mosley, we've seen him just develop with the 49ers, and really in 2021, we saw how good he can be when he plays the majority of the snaps. I thought he was fantastic in 2021. Of course, with the way the defenses and offenses operate this day and age, you rarely have 3 linebackers, and you're not going to be able to, get as many snaps ahead of a guy like Fred Warner or Dre Greenlaw unless there's an injury. So Azeez Shire, I think that he probably loves the 49ers, and I think he loves the teammates, but he will go somewhere where he'll get an opportunity to play a lot of football. Don't be surprised if he follows D'Amico Ryans to the Houston Texans, and I do think he'll get a decent-sized contract, and basically I don't foresee him coming back, although I'd love to have him back. Now, the next player on the list here, it's going to be Robbie Gould. For me, I would bring Robbie back on a 2-year deal. Of course, as you can see on the screen, he's 41 years old, so definitely older. In no way, shape, or form is he going to be kicking, 60-yard field goals for you. But I think generally speaking, 50 yards and in, he's still a very reliable kicker, someone that you can really count on, especially in the playoffs. And it is one of those underrated things that just having a good, reliable kicker is just so important. So yes, I would absolutely re-sign Robbie Gould to a 2-year deal. Now, moving on to Daniel Brunskill. He's a guy I've always been pretty big fan of. Daniel Brunskill. I don't think that he's a Pro Bowl caliber guy by any means. However, what I like about Brunskill always is his versatility. And I think if the price was right, I would absolutely bring him back, maybe on a 1 or maybe 2-year deal, but most likely a 1-year deal for Daniel Brunskill, simply because of the fact that I don't necessarily want Brunskill to start, but just he can play essentially all 5 positions on the offensive line, and there is a huge amount of value in that. He can basically play any of those positions at a solid level, so you really need that throughout the course of a 17-game regular season. Now, so I would bring back Daniel Brunskill. Hassan Ridgeway, this is an interesting one. I thought Ridgeway was playing pretty solid this year. Then he did pick up the injury later in the year, and our run defense did drop off at that point, so he's someone on a cheaper deal than what he made, maybe like a $1.5 million 1-year deal. I would absolutely consider bringing back Hassan Ridgeway, especially because his specialty is in run defense, and that is something that, although the Niners defensively ranked ridiculously well, I do think that our run defense struggled a little bit down the stretch, so bringing him back would be great. Now, moving on to the next play here, it's going to be Kerry Heider. Now, Kerry Heider, I think a solid guy, rotational guy. I would bring him back on a vet minimum deal. Didn't really get that many snaps, as you can see here, played maybe 33% of the snaps on defense last year, but I would probably rather go a little bit younger, so I don't think that Kerry Heider would be a priority for me bringing him back. Tyler Croft, I don't see him coming back. I don't think he's an awful player, but we, of course, know what happened in the NFC Championship game. I just didn't really see much of him or anything that, and I think there's better options in free agency and also in the draft. So I'm going to say no on Tyler Croft. Josh Johnson, I'm also going to say no to. Tashawn Gibson, absolutely. If Tashawn Gibson, it sounds like he's maybe considering retirement. If he wants to play one more year, I would absolutely welcome Tashawn Gibson Sr. with open arms. He and Hufanga, they just play so well together and well off each other. Hufanga really aggressive, and then Gibson is really like the veteran guy who knows where to be, right place, right time to make the plays. So yes, I would bring back Tashawn Gibson. Now looking at Maurice Hurst, I don't think so. Just too many injuries. We haven't really seen him. Maybe a camp body, but you just, at this day, he's been on the team for 2 years and we haven't really seen him play. So probably no. Tabor Pepper, yes, I would bring him back, 2-year deal. As a long snapper, I don't really remember any awful snaps, and that's, at the end of the day, that's all you can really hope for from your long snapper. Ross Dwelley, also another guy I would maybe let go. I don't dislike Ross Dwelley that much, but I just think that we can do better, similar to the Tyler Croft. I just think we can do better than Ross Dwelley. We have Kittle, we have Charlie Warner. I think what we'll do is we will bring someone in free agency and also the draft at tight end, and just to get some, fresh blood at tight end. So Jordan Willis, he is someone who I would bring back on a 1-year deal, basically the same deal that he had this year, essentially. So essentially the vet minimum deal on a 1-year deal. I think he's a good rotational guy, has some value on special teams, and you do need these guys to fill out your roster. So I do like Jordan Willis. Plus, he's still relatively young. He's not like 32, 33 like Kerry Heider is. Now, moving on after Jake Brendel, yes, I'm bringing back Jake Brendel. I would probably give him a 2 maybe I would happily give him a 2-year deal, maybe like a 3-year deal, but after 2 years you can basically cut him. But I think he ended up playing really well last year. It took him a little while to get going, but that was his first year as a starter. Plus, also keep in mind that for the vast majority of the snaps, he's playing beside a guy like Aaron Banks, who never played meaningful snaps, and Spencer Burford, who was a rookie. So, and I think that they really meshed well as the season went on. So when you put that all together, and for me, a big thing for the offensive line is consistency. So if you can keep consistency on the offensive line with 4 out of your 5 guys, then I think you're doing really well there. And I think these guys could really grow together. Although I would say that maybe drafting a center or really seeing what we have in a guy like Jason Poe or Nick Zakel at center would be very interesting to see in the preseason. Now after that, T.Y. McGill, he's someone who I think we could bring in at some point throughout the season for depth on the defensive line. I do think we'll address it relatively aggressively in free agency and the draft. We have Eric Armstead. In this situation, I would bring back Hassan Ridgeway. We have Javon Kinlaw. Kinlaw, we know we can't really count on him. And then there's another player or two that we'll get to later here. But with McGill, I think he's like a veteran guy who could be brought in during the season, something like a case like that. Now, Jordan Matthews, no, I don't really think so. He hasn't really done anything. Jason Verrett, just a bit similar to Maurice Hurst. You just can't count him. Love the guy. Love him as a player. I'd maybe, think as maybe like an entry-level coach or something like that, but you just can't count on him to play, and it's a shame because he's a really good player. Kevin Gibbons, so he's another guy on the interior defensive line I would absolutely bring back. You will see that he's a restricted free agent. I would offer him probably the 7th-round restriction level, see if someone gives him a big contract. Maybe you get a pick in return. Otherwise, you can always match that contract, but I do like Kevin Gibbons. Pretty good at getting pressure on the passer from the interior. Could work to do a little bit better in run defense, though. Demetrius Flanagan, Foles, DFF. I would definitely offer him, probably similar things, 7th round, restriction free agent, where, if another team wants to give him big money, okay, good for you. But I think DFF, I would like to bring him back on a 1-year deal, simply because I think he's good depth. At linebacker, right now, we have Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Oren Burks. So I would like him as well for depth. He's definitely shown us some decent things in time. And again, like a lot of these other positions, I wouldn't be surprised if we draft a linebacker as well. But I do like him for depth. So Colton McCarty, he's a restricted free agent. Yes, I would definitely want him back as well. He's going to be competing for that right tackle spot, especially with McGlinchey going. And at the moment, you'd probably have Brunskill, McKivitz, and Jalen Moore competing for the right tackle spot. And that doesn't even factor in the free agency or a potential draft pick as well. So yes, I would bring back Colton McKivitz. Tarvarius Moore, I think at this point, I don't know, maybe from that injury that he had, he just hasn't regained the athleticism. Seemingly in 2019, in the Super Bowl, he had an interception, and he was definitely like the trajectory was going up, but just kind of completely fallen away, and just I doubt that we'll see Tarvarius Moore back. I just don't see it. So Juwan Jennings, now this is an interesting one here. He's an exclusive rights free agent. So what that means is we can essentially give him a 1-year deal, and teams can't even basically try to match that or whatever. So for a 1-year deal vet minimum, I absolutely bring back Juwan Jennings. Despite it being a little bit of a down year for him, I was expecting him just a little bit more last season. But I do think that he's a very good number 3 receiver, makes big catches, 3rd down red zones, and also is a great blocker. So I'd bring him back, absolutely. Next one here, Charles Omenihu, I would absolutely bring back. Look at him, he's 26 years old, played more than half the snaps on defense last year, had a really good pass rushing grade, run defense, not the best. Definitely an area of his game that he can improve on, but I do think if we can improve the defensive tackle position, that will also help him out significantly in run defense. Of course, for a large portion of last season, no Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw out there, and then we were just missing a lot of guys at defensive tackle. So I think if we have more consistent, improved play defensive tackle, that will also help out Omenihu, and he's still growing and developing as a player, so I would for sure bring him back. I would say a 3-year deal I'd be happy to give Omenihu. And last but not least, it's Dante Johnson, the guy who seemingly will just always be a 49er. I would definitely go in a different direction. Maybe you bring him in for training camp just to have a veteran guy around, but I wouldn't be too concerned with Dante Johnson. I think there's definitely younger and more talented players at this point that we could go for. So there you have it, guys. That's my video. Wanted to go through each and every player who's a free agent that played with the 49ers last season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about my thoughts on these players. If you disagree with me, definitely put them in there. Let me know where you think I went wrong. And we're going to be doing a whole bunch of these types of videos as we move into, with free agency coming up and the draft. So yeah, again, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do appreciate you checking out the video. Feel free to like the video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Share it on social media. And before I head out, I'm going to say two things. The butt counts, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.